Good evening. My name is Jay Rothman, and I'm a host of the show. On last week's episode,
Now, people talk about they learn lessons later on in life. Mate, I was born into the world learning lessons. When I knew that I had to trust in thyself for my own emotional fulfillment, then I was able to build up my own self-esteem, that value, that worth, which builds the confidence, which makes you what? Trustworthy. So this undeniable self-trust that we build in self, then you can start tapping into the divine trust. Now, some may call it faith. I call it, look, with my ancestors behind my back all the time. Once I turned to that trust and I was led, not by logic, but my GPS system, the intuition of my gut, I knew that I was always going to be looked after, my brothers and sisters.
Good bombs, Ev.
I am the host of the show. My name is Jay. Welcome back to Real Men, Real Talk, Live! I'm going to take a moment here to introduce my co-host this evening. We have Evis Love coming in from down under. He calls Australia home. Welcome back, Ev.
Always a pleasure, my brother, and great to see Jay Rudy back in the house.
Oh my, it is. It's been a couple of moon rises and sunsets, about 4 or 5 of them. But gosh,
on the full moon too, brother.
coming up tomorrow. I think tonight here in the U.S. of A. But welcome back, Josh. We have missed you. Before we go there, though, Jeff Fasano is off tonight. He's doing a pretty big event somewhere in Nashville, well, Tennessee area, I believe. But he'll be back next week. Is all anticipated. The foursome will all be back next week. But for this evening, we decided to just do a threesome here. Bring you back, Jay Ritty. We figured you've been gone for so long. We'll give you some extra airtime tonight. How has it been for you not being on Real Men Real Talk Live? Have you felt like there's any kind of void or something missing in your life?
Of course. It was, one of the nights we got out of the stage late and the show was going on in the middle of the show. And I had it on the phone in the car and was watching you guys. It was, I think, one of the, I'm not sure which episode, but I think it was with Danny. But yeah, it was tough. It was like, oh man, the brothers are in the room, in the house, speaking truth, dropping bombs, all of that, and I'm not there. So it felt strange. There's always something missing, but I'm happy to be back.
It felt strange for us too, not having you here. And we had a few people jump in and do some special guest appearances, but there's only one Jay Ritty, and we're glad to have you back home. Welcome home.
Thank you, guys.
And so tonight,
light them up tonight.
Let's light them up. Tonight's episode is 172. The topic is changing the agreement, discovering, stating, and honoring your needs. What we're going to do tonight is I'm going to invite Ev, you're on the top shelf, to kick us off, get us hot, light us up, and get the show going on what does this episode mean for you. But before you do go there, viewers, thank you for joining us this evening. If you're catching us on live or on replay, the truth is you showed up right on time, your time, divine time. And having said that, if you hear something you like or love, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comment section. And also, we invite you to share it out with your friends and family. But in the meantime, let's jump into tonight's episode 172, Changing the Agreement. Ev, what does that mean for you today?
Changing the agreement. As always, brothers and sisters, here in the land down under, thank you for dropping in. If you share it out into the community, we much appreciate it. As I always say, we just be a few brothers around here, sitting around having a bit of a yarn and a bit of a chat. So changing the ingredient, being able to state those particular needs within our lives, like I was groomed, and I'm sure as we hear tonight, many of us, we were groomed from a very early age to put others' needs before our own. If I was ever to put my needs before someone else's as I was growing up, I was termed selfish. And so I went through life making agreements to probably a lot of things that not necessarily I probably would agree to these days. But as I go through my journey, become more conscious and aware of some of these agreements that I've been agreeing into, you start to become aware that really at the bottom of a lot of this, my brothers and sisters, is that we've got to really put into the forefront of our mind the way that we communicate, not only to those people, places, and things outside of ourselves, but most importantly, how we're communicating to ourselves. So there's many reasons why we agree, whether it's into certain relationships, whether it's into certain, situations, circumstances that we may not, like I said, typically want to agree into in our life. Now, parts of my life were certainly I was agreeing to certain things to fit in, to be validated, to just be part of the team, so to speak. And then I became that yes man. And we've talked about this on plenty of episodes where those agreements in the long run, my brothers and sisters, were detrimental to my health and my well-being. So as we talk about it here tonight, I really want you to come and take to the forefront, even just start identifying some of those needs within your life. What would it look like in your life if those needs were being met? Not only interpersonally, but most importantly, personally to your life. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to hearing what the boys have got to say, particularly in context to what we're talking about with the agreement. And I want to hear from you, Mr. J. Ritty.
Yeah, I'm totally cool. You just keep talking, man. That was, I mean, you're nailing it. I mean, how many of us did grow up putting others first, and that was considered thoughtful, that was considered being a good person, that was considered kind, but we're not being kind to ourselves by ignoring our needs and putting others first. And I did that for a lifetime. I mean, the reason I brought up this topic with you, Jay, is because I'm just now getting it, and just now changing the agreements across the board in my life. Like you said, Ev, personally and business relationships, friendships, with parents as well. It's just, it's everything. And once we finally feel, I don't want to say safe, because not everybody makes you feel safe. Once we feel safe and trust ourselves that we can express these things and that we are not going to be rejected, denied, alone, and that it is safe for us to express these needs of ours and change agreements, and that this is not only healthy, but it's a fantastic way to love ourselves. And we won't get it. We can't expect the world to anticipate our needs. And especially if we've been in agreements for a very long time that haven't changed. It's okay to state to these people, places, and things that, I've changed, I've grown, I've evolved as a person. I'm on this healing journey and I'm moving into a new phase. And these are my terms.
Love that, brother. And what do you think's changed for those people around you, my brother, that now you're more conscious and aware of your needs? Have people just magically changed, or have they respected, who you are today?
Well, we always come back to it, right? We said it many times on this show. We treat people, or we teach people how to treat us. And this is exactly what we're talking about. If we just accept these old agreements and we get bitter and salty about it and don't, advocate for ourselves or state our needs and renegotiate these agreements in our lives, then yeah, they're going to treat us the same way they've been used to treating us. And as we change, evolve, and grow, and all of this comes from being on a self-healing journey, being on the path. You're going to bump into this. It's going to happen. The contracts and the agreements that you had before will expire. And it's okay to sit at the table and say, I love you enough to renegotiate this. And then the agreements that are just plain unhealthy, you're willing to, tear them up, throw them in the fireplace, and walk away. It's all up to us.
Yeah, brother. You reckon, Mr. Roth, the man?
It's interesting. It's really easy for us to, even on the show tonight, to focus on the agreements outside of ourselves, with friends, lovers, acquaintances, relatives, even in business, our employment, our association, whether we're a direct employee or an independent, it doesn't matter. There's always the agreement there. However, the most important agreement that I think so many of us ignore is the agreement with ourselves. How are we showing up for ourselves? How are we not showing up for ourselves? This really struck me this morning. I had a rare morning off. I was in the wilderness by myself, and I was just really processing tonight's show and really tapped into the truth, which for me, at least, my truth is that I had a pretty lousy agreement with myself. I was abusing myself on all levels, the emotional, the mental, the physical, and the spiritual level in my life for most of my life. And eventually it caught up. And today I make different choices for myself that are much healthier. But what makes it challenging is when you become that conscious observer and you pay attention to how other people are showing up, not to judge them, but you're paying attention, you're looking, you're watching, you're listening. And I see so much pain, even in such a beautiful community like Sedona, where I call home today. And I work with a lot of men and women as well, but I see a common thread. This is a show, Real Men, Real Talk, live. So I'm going to, in this moment, kind of touch on my experience with working with men that are in these relationships in their life, because we all are, whether it be intimate or platonic, and even on a business side. We seem to have a very common thread, which is that we're really afraid to express our needs in a healthy way. We have an easier time expressing our needs in the unhealthy way, where we get angry, we express rage at times, frustration, lack of tolerance, and lack of patience. But we don't feel safe to express our needs when we're not satisfied, when we're not, let's say, in alignment with an old agreement. And what is it that blocks us? What is it that is the wall from feeling safe enough to be able to express what your needs are, to shift or change the agreement, renegotiate the agreement, or rip it up and walk away from it and say, no, thank you. So I'm going to kind of open that up to either one of you gentlemen right here, right now, to kind of share from your perspective, because I witness it every day. And I'm just curious from your perspective, what is it that you think as a man that in the past held you back from having the courage to dive in and even broach the conversation of the topic of, we need to talk about this agreement. I'm no longer at peace with it. It's not feeling good for me. What is the block?
Mine was definitely my worth. The doubt that I was going to be accepted if I wasn't agreeing and just making that passive agreement. But I had to be totally clear of what those needs initially were for me. Because when we have a look at really when these needs are not being met, whether that's, with a loved one, those people around us, or with ourselves, most importantly, we always come back to it. You're either going to experience positive emotions or negative emotions. So for me, we've got to identify and ask ourselves what these needs. And to do that, you need to know you. To be kind to you is to be kind to them. But most people, as we know, Mr. Rothman, particularly some of these brothers that we're helping on the journey, they don't know themselves. They're not in touch with themselves. None of these brothers feel or able to express their emotions. So my little gateway is always saying, all right, brothers, if you don't know what those needs are at this point in your life and you can't even feel emotions, then feel the sensations that your body gets when you're in these particular predicaments that may be causing you these negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Your body is a messenger, and it may hold a lot of the trauma and it may hold a lot of the abuse, but it is a messenger for you to be able to open up and start to express and feel and identify some of these emotions that come up within our life.
Beautiful. You nailed it. Like when I started even thinking about my needs, I couldn't identify them. I didn't. When you do this for the very first time, you're sort of like, okay, what what do I need? It's really hard to recognize in those moments when you're not used to it or you haven't tuned your ear. You know, it's kind of like music. There's a certain frequency that's going on inside of you, and if you haven't tuned your ear to it, you can't hear it. You can't hear the messages that your heart and your soul are trying to tell you. And so, yeah, you are lost. You are. And I think having, for me, having a partner that really celebrated that and asked was helpful for me to start tuning that ear. Because in those moments, I would have to check in and say, what do I want? What are my needs? What am I missing anything? Is there anything, here's a person who's captively asking me a question and wants to know a truthful answer. And I would take that moment to check in. And it was, repetition thereafter, getting used to tuning my ear to that sound, the sound of me that's inside. And so it was certainly helpful having someone that, she made me feel safe. That was key. It was clutch, and it opened that door for me to start exploring that in myself. And then once that happened, I started exploring it in friendships and business relationships and everything that we're talking about tonight. But yeah, it was really hard to even discern what my needs were in the beginning. It's tough. I feel you brothers out there. I do. It's an interesting one to get used to if you haven't been taught.
And you're lucky enough. Sorry, brother, you go.
No, go ahead. Finish it up. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, and you've been lucky enough. You had that partner that was able to create the safe space for you to be able to identify and express those needs. But what about some of these brothers? Do you feel, man, like, a lot of them, they put themselves in isolation.
Yeah.
And they seclude themselves. What about some of these brothers? What could you maybe even give them a little bit of a magic tip off the J Ritty?
I think another huge part was celebrating and honoring all parts of self and dropping the shame, dropping the stories, dropping the, Ev, like you said, it's our worth. I mean, that need to fit in. In what ways did we bend and lie to ourselves and try and convince ourselves that we need to do this, that, or the other thing because we don't want to be alone, or we don't want to be left out, or we don't want to be, we want to fit in, or we want to, all of these things make us basically abandon ourselves and our needs. And when you get used to that over a lifetime, it is really strange to check in and go, wait, what are my needs aside from needing to fit in or get love from other people or, all of that stuff? When you start to love all parts of you, then you go, wait a minute, you start to listen to those parts. The child part wants to play sometimes, and I'll just listen, I'll check in with my child self and be like, what do you want to do today? He's like, I want to go for a drive really fast on the highway and in the new car. And I'm like, okay, let's go drive 80 miles an hour and hopefully I don't get pulled over. And then I'll check in with the other parts, and it's listening.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. What I also experience, at least this is my personal experience in my own life, and I witness a very similar pattern with many other men and women that I work with on the land, is that unfortunately many of us are mentored. We're taught by our fathers and our mothers how they show up, and it's that hardware, it's the programming that we receive. We as children, we're listening, we're paying attention, we're seeing, we're observing, we're a witness to how our fathers are showing up in a relationship. We witness to how, if we have a father and a mother in our childhood, we witness them. And so often we actually then, when we become the adult, we fall into the same patterns. I could tell you that I felt like probably in most of my younger years as a married man, I probably most likely behaved a lot like my father did. I didn't know how to express my feelings. I didn't feel safe to express my feelings without being jumped on, or without getting into a offense defensive kind of posture.
Mhm.
And I witness it even today in the work I do, where so many of the men are afraid to express their feelings, if they even know what they are, because they've been so walled off for them for so long, as Jay Ritty has mentioned in his truth tonight. But the fear is that our partners, our relationship partners, turn into our parent as well. And so much of the time, we're not even really hearing the tone with which we're speaking, or the words with which we're saying to one another. And so we're adults showing up as children, especially as men. At least that's how I showed up. I want to bring up Cindy B. Welcome back, Cindy B. She says here, how about men expressing their needs in a passive avoidance manner? Fear of showing vulnerability and sharing truth, insecurity. So what she's really asking here is, how many men are showing their needs in a passive avoidance manner? What is that? How would you break that down, Ev?
Well, I mean, it's a couple of angles, and you've just mentioned one. Obviously, we may have seen dad, even mum, in that programming in the earlier age, not really being able to commit to that emotional development within their life, and that emotional side, we stuff down over time.
Mhm.
And if we don't show that vulnerability, we actually saw it. I mean, I put my hand up. Vulnerability was never looked at as a strength. It was looked at as a weakness. So many of us, we've stuffed it down. So we do become quite passive aggressive. And it's not really so much about insecurity. It may be insecure in the way that we can't express ourselves clearly on a deeper note. But like you mentioned earlier too, Jay, is that, we abandon ourselves because we can't express those emotions.
Mhm.
So for me, when we're touching on being able to express clearly, and I mentioned for these brothers that are in isolation, that are keeping themselves in that lonely state, you've just got to get in touch with the body. You've got to ask yourself questions. What is making you feel a particular way, whether it's lighthearted or whether it's really down in the dumps? Start journaling this stuff down. And like I mentioned, start getting to know yourself. Because how we're relating or conversing with those people outside of ourselves is just how we're relating with ourselves. So once we're in touch with how we're communicating with ourselves, then we can start expressing ourselves to others with a lot much more clarity and confidence.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about you guys, but how many times in your unbalanced self in the past would you get pushed so far in an argument and you're so afraid to express a need or whatever it is that probably is underneath and started the whole argument to begin with, and you finally explode and you're yelling and you're, you know, just it comes out so rough because yes, we were taught to stuff that. We weren't taught that it's safe for men to share those things. And in a lot of male environments, it's not safe because of how the other men were taught as well. And so it's this sort of like stuff it culture, like you were talking about, Ev. And Cindy, you know, it may come out that way because they don't know how, like you said, Ev. And so be patient with us and ask if you really want your man to be vulnerable and truthful and honest in himself with his emotions and feelings, and then in turn honest with you, is ask him, what do you need from me today? You know, I know you had a big, stressful, hard day. What do you need from me? And odds are we haven't been asked that much at all or ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really strange question to be asked at first because you don't know how to answer. It's like, I don't know what I need. I need a hug. I maybe need to watch a movie. I need to order in food. I don't know. But the more you ask, the more we tune our ear to that, and the better we get at, and we feel safe communicating those things without backlash, without attacks, or without being too sensitive or weak, or all the, you know, the things that society has taught us men. But yeah, it's really hard at first.
And what you're saying there, brother, it's really good opportunity to really talk about also in the different ways that masculine energy and that feminine energy is communicating.
Mm-hmm.
For our sisters out there and that feminine energy, you got to realize that a lot of men still, if there is an A and a B being the problem, they want to make a C the solution to fix it.
Yep.
So we can't understand. You have to communicate to us clearly if a need is not being met. For the masculine energy, also, I mean, I has had to put my hand up in my previous relationship that I knew that not everything needed to be fixed.
Amen.
That in the end, all she wanted me to do was listen. So that was a practice that I had to start practicing within my life, which I'm very thankful for that person as well.
Wait a minute. Whoa. I want to rewind. Woo. I want to hear that again. Ev, what did she say? I want you to just repeat. What is it that she needed from you?
She needed me to listen, not fix.
There you go. Boom.
That was a big one for me too. Took me a long time to learn that.
Why do we all feel the need to fix? What is that? What is the fix? Where does that come from? What is it that we're afraid if we don't jump in and fix her problem or his problem? What is it that we're afraid of? How will we be judged?
Mm-hmm.
Failure.
Take it deep, right? Right. We
Failure
take it
in the relationship.
Our fault, right?
Yep.
Well, but too, also, I mean, as a, you know, the masculine energy wants to protect and wants to create safety. And when, you know, our women are expressing anything outside of that there is a threat, there is a, you know, something's going on, there's some friction. Yeah. It's like, we want to just, you know, swoop in and boom, solve the problem. Cool. We're safe now. That feels good. And we want to do that. And it's frustrating when we can't. And with emotional things, we can't. We don't know how. And it's confusing in ourselves too when we're feeling emotional friction in ourselves. We want to fix ourselves too and get past this and move on. And that's generally why we just stuffed it. But I don't know. Did I answer your question, Jay?
Yeah, I think it's that's a good answer. Not that it's a good or bad. There's no judgment there, but I mean it's a rabbit hole. It really is. There's different reasons why we jump in to fix it. Part of it could be learned behavior from our ancestors. It could even be whoever had an influence on our life as from the masculine divine energy. But it also part of that too is I think I always felt responsible. Like part of my role was to, part of being the man in the house was to be the hero, was to show up and sweep her off her feet and make everything okay. And it's so beautiful for me today to be in a different kind of relationship where when my partner's going through a lull or a low vibe, which doesn't happen that often for her, but when it does, it's kind of foreign for me because my past go-to was try to go in and rescue, try to go in and fix, and I may throw out a couple of suggestions, but ultimately I have no control over it. This is her journey, and this is what she's got to go through. This is how she's gonna ascend, grow, learn things about herself. And if I show up and I just go back into old rescue patterns and old rescue mode, she's not going to learn anything. Actually, when we show up for someone else to that extreme, we are disempowering them.
Exactly. And how beautiful is it to empower someone to go that they can do it themselves. They can get through this themselves. And I'm here to listen. And I'm here to be, by your side. I'm here to cheer you on when you get through this. And I know you got this. Yep. That's a much better response than.
It takes practice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It takes practice to get there, because if we were always on autopilot, it's us changing the agreement with ourselves. Brings it right back to that agreement. It's the agreement with ourselves that we need to change. One of the agreements I want to talk about, we've touched on this quite a bit tonight, was especially as men, and plenty of women are walled off from their emotions as well, and not even either being able to identify what they're feeling or how to feel safe to express them. I want to invite both of you gentlemen to jump in here and share perhaps any tips, tricks, and tools, and how can we get out of our let's say our heavy masculine divine energy and tap into, whether as a man or a female, the feminine divine energy within, so that we as men or our friends who may be women or our partners that are somewhat hesitant to open their heart to what are some of the tips, tricks, and tools that we can share tonight from our own journey of opening up our hearts as men, as we have all been navigating over the last few years or so? What are some of the gateways? How do we open a portal to the heart or soul?
I'm dying to hear what you're saying, Ev.
Well, there's many tips and tricks, brother. I mean, if you want to go into that area,
yeah, let's go there.
We've definitely got to learn first why it's not happening. So ask ourselves the big question up until this point within our life: why am I not coming from that heart space? Why am I not being able to stay balanced in my both masculine and divine feminine energies? So we start to become self-aware. We go on the introspection journey as opposed to the outerspection, always looking outside for that validation. That's external, that's masculine energy. But when we go on an inward journey, for me, and I know Jay Ritcher and definitely me, Mr. Jay the Roth Man, put yourself in an environment that's going to allow you just to be in that presence of that divine energy that you're talking about, Jay the Roth Man. It's no secret that we go straight out in country, straight out in nature. Nature allows you to be more present with yourself, to start going on that inward journey. But being in the environment where sometimes, things are just too noisy for us to even grasp what that inner self, that little voice that you were talking about earlier, Jay Ritty, what that may be within our lives. So placing yourself in these environments, to me, my brothers and sisters, is critical. But then being mindful of some of your actions and behaviors that have tapped you out of this balance with these two divine energies. So it may be as simple as being mindful of how you eat. Be mindful of the taste, the sensations that you have when you're actually dipping into foods. Be mindful of the environments that you're putting yourself in. Are you around certain people that are actually bringing you down rather than building you up? And for me, as always, my brothers and sisters, one of those gateways easily, we say after show, Mr. Jay Ritty, is just practice gratitude. Practice gratitude for all of this.
Yep.
If you've been knocked out of balance with those particular energies, even accept that. So yeah, man, there's a couple, Mr. Rother, man.
Mm-hmm.
And you're on
Beautiful,
mute.
I know. Go ahead, Josh. Jay Ritty. I got to get used to that name. Jay Ritty. I knew we met.
I honestly put it up there for fun.
Okay.
I didn't mean that you have to call me that. It's just been a playful thing that I started, and I'm like, screw it.
All
right. But yeah. Where does it start? What are the tools? I keep coming back. One of the most beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things. And I did self-help voraciously. I read every book. I paid $15,000 for a seminar package that was 3 years. I did intensive 10, 12-hour day, 5-day weeks every quarter with this group. And I did all of the things, and I listened to all the speakers, and they were top speakers, from the world in this thing. And I kept thinking that today's going to be the day, and somebody's going to say something, and the light switch is going to go on for me, and I'm going to get it. And I was jotting notes, and I even went home and retyped my notes into the computer, hoping that that repetition would set it into my brain. I mean, I applied my bipolar energy to self-help, and I still never got what I needed to, that light switch. I still never got the aha moment. And it's because I was searching outside of myself, and the answers have always been within. And I had to run all the way around the world and come all the way back home before realizing what worked for me, which was loving all my parts. The kooky ones, the nerdy ones, the sticky ones, the bumpy ones, the horny ones, the loud ones, the shy ones, the goofy ones. When we love, or when I'll speak in the I, when I started loving all of those, was when I could finally let go of the things that were controlling me, which was seeking love outside myself to feel good, seeking approval outside myself to feel good, working so hard at jobs and climbing the ladder so that I'd feel enough, worthy, successful. And all of that started to come from within. When I started loving all parts of myself and honoring all parts of myself. And then I was able to start communicating my needs because I wasn't afraid anymore of being judged or dumped or fired, or, it's that fear. So I guess my question to you would be, what are you afraid of? What is the underlying fear? What are you afraid of? And find a way to give that to yourself, or find it in yourself, because it's there. all of this was already in me. I just had to come home to it and find it. And so, what are you afraid of? And that will lead you, there's your breadcrumbs. That'll lead you down the path to some answers that I think will help you out a lot.
Yeah.
Well, that was a lot in that small package right there, Josh. Wow. I wish I could say I have a different perspective from what the two of you just shared, but I don't. I too was running and gunning. I share that I've lived in 10 states over my adult life. I get irritable and discontent. I pick up and create the next business opportunity in the next city and then eventually the next state. 10 states, close to 20 homes owned over my lifetime. And what ended up happening was wherever I moved, I showed up. There was a common denominator that I just couldn't see. And for me, if I'm going to share tips, tricks, and tools, the gateway to changing the agreement with ourselves, to open up our hearts and get out of our head, as Ev said, one was nature. I never had time for that. I didn't make the time for it. I didn't think I had the time for it. But when I finally surrendered to get out of my head and my house and get into nature, initially it was at the ocean. That was key. The second thing for me that really helped me crack wide open my heart and my emotions, healthy ones, and vulnerability was having the courage to show up and start writing, expressing what I was feeling at the deepest level. And I had a block around writing. I couldn't write with a pen in a journal, but I got an intuitive hit one day. It was time to open up my notes app on my phone. Just start typing. I knew how to type. Could write a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year business plan. So that made it easier for me to start to create comfort. But through the writing for me was I would just pick a different topic every single day. Something that came to my mind, something that was on my mind. And I made that became the topic for that journal entry. And then the next level up was, it wasn't just writing it. It was then reading out loud what I just expressed of how I was feeling. And that's when I cracked wide open. That's when the tears started to come. And that was back in early 2016, the end of 2015, early 16. And from that day forward, my life has been changed forever. That I'd say was the biggest portal, you want to call it a shortcut to coming home, to find your way home to yourself, to your soul, to your truth. For me, that was, I'd say, the biggest power tool that I experienced. I had never journaled before in my life. I will also share that for me, music was also a very big piece of it. It still is. I put certain music on while I'm writing because it brings me into what I call that parasympathetic nervous system response. Gets me out of anxiety, fear, adrenaline. And of course, the third component for me was nutrition. I was polluted. My body was polluted. Not only was it polluted, I was dehydrated. I wasn't drinking water, only to take my pharmaceuticals for all the health conditions I picked up along my journey. So nutrition's a big part. If you want to have healthier thoughts, and you have to provide nutrition to your brain neurologically. And if you're not drinking half your body weight in ounces minimum every day, then you're living in a chronic state of dehydration. How do you expect to have healthier thoughts when you're not fueling? It's almost like driving a car without gasoline. How far are you going to get when you're on empty? Eventually, the car is going to stall. It's going to die. Well, we are on a slow death when we're not consuming the minimum nutrients for the body temple, first with the brain, because that's where it all begins. It's our thoughts. So those are just a few I wanted to share with the two of you tonight. I can't guarantee you that it's going to work for you, but I can only tell you that that was the biggest impact of my life. And part of this whole agreement, I want to switch gears one more time, Josh, and bring in. I think you and I have been in this relationship. I think we know each other going back to 2018. I don't think it was before that. It was when I first started podcasting, and I was introduced to you. And so I've watched you evolve on a personal level, big time, and grow and go through the ebbs and flows of life. But I've also witnessed you year after year from a business standpoint as you step out to do your work for your business, and then you come back in to Real Men Real Talk Live. And each season, I have just been a conscious observer. And what I want to invite you to do from your perspective is share with us as viewers this evening, this season that you just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. My sense was very different for you, because at least within yourself, you may have changed the agreement, how you were showing up in your role as the art director of a very, very successful TV program. From your perspective, how was this season different for you?
Well, excuse me. There are two parts. We shoot it in two pods, and we have a month off in between. So my answer has two parts. June, when we shot in June, I lost 17 pounds. And I know because I was working out and I got myself to the best place I'd ever been in body wise. Was very proud of that and have worked many years to get there. And I lost 17 pounds of that through stress and not eating right and basically not setting my boundaries with work. And so there's a tangible number. Our shooting here in September that just ended, I lost 3. And I can tell, and I know, just like what you said, Jay, you can see the difference, and I can see it too. And the lesser toll it took on my body this go around, because I truly set more boundaries. The work is hard, and it's hard not to avoid that. However, I was changing the agreements. I was changing the boundaries. I was changing the amount I was willing to sacrifice, before I was sacrificing sleep, and I was sacrificing food and nutrition, and I was sacrificing, so much for that show. And I said, no more. I can't. This isn't healthy for me anymore. I can't live this life. It's not worth it to me anymore for a title, a job, or whatever. I'm worth more than that. And I need to keep myself healthy. And so from 17 pounds to 3, I'm really proud of how I did.
Nice,
yeah.
Beautiful. What do you make of that, Ev?
Yeah, brother.
What did you hear in that little package?
Man, he's looked after himself, but not only that, he's stuck close to his values. And, you talked a little bit in there about the boundaries that you actually put up this time, but it's the lessons that you learned from the previous experience. That's really the key for me. Going from that 17 to 3, I mean, it shows that you're more in sustainable balance with your life and more in tune to that inner self, aligned to those values. And I was only having a conversation with a brother the other day, and he's actually in the mines, one of the mines here in the land down under. And he's just taken this particular job. And, the family's moved here on a great wicket, getting some really good coin, pay package after it. But he's hit me up, obviously, for the meal plan because he's noticed, very similarly, brother, but going the other way, where he's actually putting weight on because he's overworked, because he's burnt out, because he's not aligned to his number one value, which is family. So he's put all of his work into his career and what he's currently doing now, and his needs aren't being met. He's made an agreement to someone else's agreement that deep down aren't his own. And that's why I always say to people, I want to know your values. What is at the top of that value list? Most people will say family. Most people will say, respect. Most people will say well-being. So if your well-being is not being met and there is something out of alignment, that's when we've got to go to the drawing board. And that's what it sounds like that you did, my brother. You went back to that drawing board, and from that previous experience, you now know how to keep your body in balance. When we keep this body in balance, we're able to create those experiences that we may look out to pursue. But that's why I said earlier, my brothers and sisters, it is key, as Jay Ritty and Jay the Rothman have said tonight, to be in tune with your body. Now, just quickly, brother, the other conversation I remember the other day, I said, as we go into this new way of living and in this new earth, someone said, well, what's most important, Ev? What body? Because I talk about the 5D body. I talk about the physical, the etheric, the astral, the divine, the soul. I talk about these bodies. I said, it's the physical body going into the new earth. So what do you mean by that? I said, because how can we possibly operate in this material, this physicality, without the body in fine tune, looking after it, keeping it balanced, keeping it at that equilibrium? How can we possibly be able to operate on those top gears without looking after our body? Because as we look after our body, we actually receive those downloads that we need to move forward in much more peace and harmony. So yeah, my brother, I think you're onto it now.
Beautiful. Yeah, I want to just acknowledge Josh and just congratulate you. It's okay for me to even say these words. I'm proud of you. And I say that because so many of us in our adulthood very rarely hear those words spoken. We didn't hear them in many of our homes growing up. And I work with so many men and women today that they still don't hear it. And the most important person to change that agreement with is yourself. It's okay to take time while you're off right now, while you're in kind of catching your breath, you're in recovery, you're processing this past season that I just wrapped up, 15, I believe. And take time to be proud of yourself. Honor what you have able to measure with growth through less weight loss, through how you were feeling, more sleep, things of that nature. Take time to really honor yourself. And it's okay to say, I'm proud of myself. I didn't know how to do that. I've learned how to do it today, and it's part of. I do it. I share those words with people that I am proud of, because I know how difficult it can be to pivot. I know how challenging it can be to change the agreement in all aspects of our life. So yeah, right. Ev, you agree with me? You agree? Is it okay to look in the mirror and say, I'm proud of me? And it's not from an ego.
Yeah.
Celebrate that win. Celebrate,
yeah, right,
brothers and sisters. You're number one fan.
Yeah.
If we can't celebrate ourselves, then who can?
Yeah.
Dudes, but you're right. Stop. Take the time, and I did. I was like really proud of how I handled this one. And there wasn't a big crash afterwards that there usually is, and emotional crash, and so yeah, I was damn proud. It was a good one.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well done, Josh J. Ritty. With
But
what time?
I wanted to
ahead.
comment. You said that it's hard, Jay, and it is. And I do want to honor everybody out there who are making this shift, making the effort, fighting the old stories and beliefs, and up against sometimes generations of teaching and patterns. And I just want to honor the fight and the struggle and that it takes. And, we throw out a lot of tips and tricks and stuff like that. But, and it took us a long, long while to get to this too. So honor that in you as well. That fight, that willingness to keep moving forward, keep pushing through stories, beliefs. I mean, there will be no end. We're on a constant learning path, growing path in this life, but it does get easier when you cross a few of these thresholds, and changing agreements in yourself, the dominoes will start to fall for sure.
With what time we have left here, we got about 4 minutes to go to the hour, and I want to try to wrap it on the hour if at all possible this evening. I want to invite each one of you to put some closing thoughts, put a pretty bow in the show, and let's call it a wrap from tonight's topic on changing the agreement with others and with ourselves.
That was mine. You guys are up.
All right.
I'll quickly finish up, my brother. Look, what you were talking about there too, my brothers, is beautiful, because I think you touched on it on the notes as well, Jay. Self-care is a must as we go into this new way of living, brothers and sisters. Yeah. And we're not just talking about the manicures. We're not talking about the pedicures. We're talking about you growing up and parenting yourself. So when we talk about those needs not being met, my brothers and sisters, we're talking about you being the parent of yourself, but honoring if you're in those particular partnerships and relationships, whether it's, with a beloved or work, whatever it may be, that you do honor those needs and communicate them clearly. Identify anything that has caused you any worry, doubt, concern, or fear, judgment, pain, anger. When we get past that particular part within our lives, we're able to identify that particular thing, then start feeling into it. What was I feeling? What were the emotions that are coming up? Were they my present emotions? Or was it the younger child again, spitting the dummy? Once we've been able to then sit with those emotions, then we can actually, whether it's to that, like I said, person outside of ourselves, or most importantly to yourself, identify the need that hasn't been met. Once we're able to come in tune with those needs within our life, and we can communicate them clearly and be aware of the emotions that are being triggered or that are coming up to the surface, that final step is always then, maybe we can ask that other person, or maybe we can help clearly communicate to them, this was the need that was not being met. Would you be willing to have a look at it from this angle? Can you talk to yourself like that as well, my brothers and sisters? If some of these needs are not being met, that's when the boundaries go up, my brothers and sisters. That was something I had to learn later on in life. But once we start to respect and honor those boundaries, that is not a term that is to be selfish. These needs are not a selfish act. Honoring, valuing, and clearly identifying your needs, my brothers and sisters, is an act of self-love. And on that note, my brothers, welcome home, Jay Ritty.
Amen. Evest.
Wow. I only know when truth is spoken, because it's the indication for me is I get chills. And I got chills right now. So I know that was nothing but pure truth spoken right there. My closing thoughts, I'm going to keep it short this evening and say this. I remember sitting in the rooms, 12-step rooms, and hearing a few people raise their hands and say, well, if I go on this journey of self-discovery, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of who I'll find. I'm afraid of what I may find. Don't be afraid. All I can tell you is what I found was an individual who I just love. I'm at peace. My life is very different today. Because as Ev said, it's time for us to show up. And it's time for us to grow up. Become that mystical parent. Provide to that child within what he or she didn't receive in their childhood. Heal those wounds. Don't be afraid of them. You've been living your whole life in a subconscious, fear-based experience. Come home. And when you come home, I have no doubt you're going to fall in love. You're going to love what you see. You're going to love what you feel. And on that note, I love you guys. Viewers, we'll catch you next week. Please share it out in your community. Maybe someone needs to hear what we talked about tonight. It's time to change the agreement with yourself. And with that note, thank you for joining us tonight on Real Men, Real Talk Live.